The market was loud, but she felt invisible. Vendors shouted prices over one another, carts rattled across uneven stone, and the smell of bread, warm, fresh, cruel, hung heavy in the air. She stood near the edge of it all, clutching something small in her palm, fingers curled so tightly they ached. A wedding ring, gold, thin, worn smooth on the inside where years of love had pressed against it. It glinted faintly when the light caught it, as if it still remembered happier days. She turned it slowly between her fingers, thumb brushing over the tiny scratch on the band, one she remembered too well. Her husband had made it, laughing softly as he slipped it onto her finger. "It's not perfect," he'd said. "But it's ours." He was gone now. The ring was all that remained. Her stomach twisted, sharp and hollow. Hunger had a way of making everything louder. Sounds, smells, memories. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. Maybe longer. She'd stopped counting meals when they stopped coming. Across from her, a baker lifted fresh loaves from the oven, steam rising as he stacked them neatly. The sight made her knees weak. Her mouth filled with saliva, and she had to look away, ashamed of how badly she wanted just one bite. She took a breath and stepped forward. The jeweler's stall was small but tidy, glass cases lined with silver and gold. The man behind the counter glanced up, eyes flicking quickly from her face to her worn dress, to the scuffed shoes on her feet. His interest dimmed before she even spoke. "I'd like to sell this," she said, holding out the ring. The words felt heavy, like they didn't belong to her. He took it between his fingers, inspecting it with professional detachment. Turned it once, then again. His mouth tightened. "It's old," he said. "And thin." She nodded. "I know. Worth very little. I understand." He looked at her more closely then, perhaps surprised she hadn't argued. Her face was pale, eyes sunken with exhaustion. There was no anger there. Just quiet resolve. He named a price. It was less than she'd imagined. Less than it deserved. Less than the memories it carried. But it was enough for food, barely. Her throat tightened. For a moment, she almost pulled her hand back. Almost turned away. Almost chose hunger over letting go. Then her stomach cramped again, hard enough to steal her breath. She nodded. "I'll take it." The jeweler shrugged and placed a few coins on the counter. The sound they made was sharp, final. He slid the ring into a drawer without ceremony. Just like that, it was gone. Her fingers hovered over the coins for a second before she gathered them up, pressing them into her palm as if they might disappear too. She turned away quickly, afraid that if she stayed any longer, she'd change her mind, or break. She didn't cry, not yet. She went straight to the baker. "One loaf," she said softly, laying the coins on the counter. The baker counted them, then hesitated. His eyes flicked to her hand, bare now, a pale mark circling her finger where the ring had been. He said nothing. He handed her a loaf of bread, still warm, its crust crackling slightly beneath her touch. The smell was overwhelming, comforting, painful. She clutched it to her chest like something precious and stepped away from the stall, heart pounding. A few people watched her, some curious, some indifferent, one or two whispering behind raised hands. She found a quiet spot near a wooden post and tore off a small piece of bread. Her hands trembled as she brought it to her mouth. The first bite made her eyes close involuntarily. It tasted like survival. Tears finally spilled then, blurring her vision. She chewed slowly, forcing herself not to rush, remembering too well what happened when hunger was fed too quickly. Each bite felt like both relief and loss. "I'm sorry," she thought, not sure if she was apologizing to her husband, or to herself. A shadow fell across the ground. She looked up, startled, bread still in her hand. A man stood a few steps away, tall, well-dressed, boots polished despite the dust of the market. A rancher, she could tell by the way he carried himself, by the confidence in his stillness. His eyes were sharp, observant, taking in everything, including her bare finger, including the bread, including the quiet grief she hadn't managed to hide. He said nothing at first. He just looked at her, really looked, and something in his expression changed. She had no idea who he was. And she couldn't have known that the choice she'd made moments ago, selling her wedding ring for food, had just been witnessed by the one person whose response would change her life forever. The rancher didn't speak right away. He stood there, hands resting loosely at his sides, eyes fixed not on the bread but on her face. On the way she held herself, careful, guarded, as if expecting the world to snatch even this small mercy away. She felt suddenly exposed. Instinctively, she lowered her gaze, tearing off another small piece of bread. "I paid for it," she said quickly, voice barely above the market noise. "I'm not stealing." The rancher blinked, surprised. Then something softened in his expression. "I didn't think you were," he said. His voice was calm, steady, carrying none of the sharp judgment she'd grown used to. Still, her shoulders remained tense. "I just wanted to ask," he continued, "where did you get the ring?" Her fingers froze mid-motion. The question struck deeper than she expected. She swallowed, throat tight. "It was mine." He nodded slowly. "Was." She looked up then, meeting his eyes for the first time. They were dark, thoughtful, eyes that had seen plenty, maybe too much. There was wealth in his clothes, yes, but also restraint. Nothing flashy, nothing careless. "My husband made it," she said before she could stop herself. The words spilled out, fragile and unguarded. "Before he died." The rancher inhaled quietly. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer hollow condolences. He simply listened. "I tried to keep it," she went on, shame creeping into her voice. "I really did. But hunger doesn't care about memories." A faint murmur of the crowd drifted past them. Somewhere nearby, a child laughed. Life continued, indifferent. "I know," the rancher said softly. "Hunger has a way of stripping everything else away." She studied him, confused now. People didn't usually understand. They judged, pitied, or ignored, but understanding was rare. He glanced at the bread in her hands. "Is that enough?" She hesitated. "For today." He nodded again, as if confirming something to himself. Then he reached into his coat. Her body tensed instantly. "No," she said, shaking her head. "I don't want charity." He paused, hand still inside his coat. "Neither do I," he replied. Slowly, he withdrew not coins, but the ring. Her breath caught painfully in her chest. For a moment, the world narrowed to that small circle of gold resting in his palm. The familiar scratch, the gentle curve, hers. Her hands began to shake. "I bought it back," he said. "From the jeweler." She stared at him, disbelief flooding her face. "Why would you do that?" "Because," he said simply, "some things shouldn't be priced." Tears welled up instantly, hot and unstoppable. "I can't afford it," she whispered. "I barely afforded the bread." "I'm not selling it," he said. He held the ring out to her. The space between them felt suddenly enormous. "I don't understand," she said, voice breaking. "You sold it so you could live," he replied. "That tells me everything I need to know about you." People had begun to notice. A few nearby shoppers slowed, curiosity pulling their attention toward the quiet exchange. She felt the weight of their eyes and almost stepped back. "I don't want people to think," she started. "Let them think," the rancher interrupted gently. "They'll forget by tomorrow." She laughed weakly through her tears. "I won't." He studied her for a moment longer, then spoke again. "What's your name?" "Mary," she said after a beat. "I'm Daniel," he replied. "And I own the land just beyond the eastern ridge." The name meant something to the people around them. A whisper moved through the small gathering, recognition, surprise. The rich rancher. The one with fields as far as the eye could see. Mary noticed the shift immediately. Her eyes widened. "I didn't know," he shrugged. "Doesn't change much." "It does," she said quickly. "I don't want favors from someone like someone with money," he finished. "I didn't offer you money." He gently placed the ring into her trembling palm and closed her fingers around it. "I offered you back what was yours." Her knees nearly gave out. She pressed the ring to her chest, sobbing now, no longer able to hold herself together. The bread slipped from her other hand, forgotten. Daniel glanced at it, then back at her. "Come with me," he said quietly. "There's a meal waiting at my ranch. A real one. No price attached." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "I can't just." "You can," he said. "And you should." She looked around. At the market. At the people who had watched her sell her memories for survival. At the ring in her hand. At the man standing before her, not as a savior, but as someone choosing to act. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Mary wiped her tears with the back of her hand and nodded once. All right, she said. Daniel turned and walked beside her. Not ahead, not behind, as they left the market together. And everyone who saw them knew something extraordinary had just happened. Because the rich rancher hadn't just returned a ring. He had restored dignity. The ride to the ranch was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Mary sat beside Daniel in the wagon, hands folded tightly in her lap. The ring rested safely in her pocket now, pressing gently against her thigh, as if reminding her it was real. Every few moments, she touched the fabric just to be sure. The land stretched wide and open around them, golden fields rolling beneath a pale sky. It was beautiful in a way that felt unreal, like something meant for other people's lives, not hers. You don't have to stay, Daniel said after a while, breaking the silence. Just a meal, nothing more. I know, Mary replied softly. Still, thank you. When they reached the ranch house, she was struck by its simplicity. It was large, yes, but not extravagant. Strong wooden beams, wide porches, the kind of place built for endurance rather than display. Inside, warmth greeted her, the crackle of a fire, the smell of stew simmering on the stove. Daniel set his coat aside and motioned for her to sit. Make yourself comfortable, he said. I'll get the bowls. She sat at the table, hands resting on the smooth wood. For a moment, emotion threatened to overwhelm her again. She hadn't sat at a table like this in so long. Hadn't been invited without suspicion or expectation. When Daniel returned, he placed a full bowl in front of her, along with bread, more than she could eat. She hesitated. It's all right, he said gently. Take your time. The first spoonful nearly undid her. It was rich, warm, filling, real food. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, grounding herself in the present. Daniel watched her quietly from across the table. You were married, he said after a while, not as a question. Yes, she replied. He died 3 winters ago. Fever took him. Daniel nodded, his gaze distant. My wife passed 4 years ago. Childbirth. I'm sorry, Mary said immediately. So am I, he replied simply. They sat in shared understanding, grief unspoken but acknowledged. After the meal, Daniel stood and retrieved something from a small wooden box near the fireplace. He placed it on the table between them. It was a folded document. I won't insult you with charity, he said. But I could use help here. Mary looked at the paper, confused. Help. My ranch employs many people, Daniel continued. Cooking, sewing, managing supplies. I've been doing too much alone. She hesitated, suspicion flickering. You're offering me work. Yes, he said. Fair pay, a room, meals. Her breath caught. Why? Because you're honest, he replied. And because you didn't beg. Tears filled her eyes again, different this time. Softer, hopeful. I don't know if I'm strong enough, she whispered. You already are, he said. She nodded slowly. Days passed, then weeks. Mary learned the rhythms of the ranch. Morning light, steady work, quiet evenings. She found peace in usefulness, in belonging. The ring returned to her finger, where it belonged. She laughed again, smiled without guilt, lived. Daniel watched all of it from a respectful distance. One evening, as the sun dipped low, he found her standing near the fence, looking out at the fields. You could have left, he said. I thought about it, she admitted. But I wanted to stay. He nodded. So did I. There was a pause. I didn't help you because I'm rich, Daniel said. I helped because I once lost everything too. Mary turned to him, heart pounding. I know, she said. That's why it mattered. He reached into his pocket. Her breath caught. Not in fear this time, but in recognition. The ring. Her ring. But beside it was another. Simple, strong, newly made. I won't ask you to trade memories, Daniel said quietly. Only to make new ones. Tears streamed down her face as he knelt before her. Yes, she whispered, before he could even finish. The wind carried her laughter across the fields as he slipped the new ring beside the old one. 2 rings, 2 losses, 1 future. And the people who once watched her sell her wedding ring for food would never know that the richest thing she'd found that day was kindness.